Do you find yourself questioning whether the person in your life actually is a narcissist? Are you wondering today if you're in a narcissistic relationship? Do you know your narcissistic red flag? Were you with a person that made everything seem great until one day it wasn't? Maybe you're wondering today if your partner is a narcissist. Like you feel like you're walking on eggshells around him. Gaslighting is real, and it's very, very deadly in its abuse. Have you ever encountered individuals who would use religion as a tool to be able to control and manipulate other people? Narcissists are very huge in the aspect of being hypocritical. He'll say one thing and he'll do another. He'll tell you you're not allowed to do this and he'll go out and do it. He'll cheat on you 20 times, but he'll break up with you as soon as you cheat. Have you ever felt like you're dealing with someone who's self-obsessed and who always puts themselves first before anybody else? Do you find yourself questioning whether the person in your life actually is a narcissist, or maybe the person you're dating might be a toxic person? Are you curious about the signs and the red flags of what to look out for in identifying a true narcissist? A lot of people struggle with this concept of what is a narcissist? Like, am I with a narcissist? What does this actually look like? And today I want to be able to dive into some of that, because narcissists are really difficult to identify. So, good place to be able to tell you, hey, I'm a narcissist. My name is Ben Taylor, and I'm on this channel to help provide awareness of what narcissism is and what narcissism looks like. When I talk to psychologists, different counselors that sometimes come for coaching, one of the main things that they say is we've learned about this in school, but we never knew that it would show up this way in real life. Because a lot of times people don't know. People don't understand of what it actually looks like. So we're going to kind of talk about that today, because it's difficult to identify someone if they're being a narcissist. We're not using this to diagnose for all the people out there that are going to get upset about this. But what we're doing is just saying, hey, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it eats like a duck and it swims like a duck, it might be a duck. So let's at least be careful, and let's at least use some common sense when we're looking at different characteristics in another person to identify, is this person toxic? Should I be with this person? Does this actually make sense? So I want to go over some of the common red flags, some of the characteristics that you're going to see when you see a narcissist. And by understanding these traits and understanding these patterns, you can protect yourself and you can also protect your mental health. All right, so jumping in. Grandiose sense of self-importance is one of the number one things that we see when someone's talking about a narcissist, and one of the things that is highlighted in the DSM-5 is a person who is very self-important. Now, you might have this idea of where the narcissist is only the person that's taking, snaps of themselves and selfies and posting on social media and looking like a certain way. But in reality, the majority of narcissists, whether overt or covert, view themselves in such high regard that everybody else is beneath them. They view themselves as being so important. For me, I thought I was the center of the universe. I thought everything else revolved around me. So much so that I was comfortable with joking about that and not thinking anything of it, not thinking it was a bad thing, and not worrying about what other people had to say or what other people had to think. But I expected other people to be there for me, to serve me, to respond as quickly as I wanted them to respond, to do the things that I wanted them to do because it was about me. And that's all it ever was. It didn't have anything to do with anyone else. Well, narcissists oftentimes have this inflated sense of self-worth and exaggerates a lot of times their accomplishments, their talents, the things that they've done. So when we talk about first this aspect of self-worth, a narcissist believes themselves to have so much more worth than you, which is part of the reason why they try to take your worth and put you down. Part of it is because the incongruence of their inflated sense of self-worth and who they actually are. So even though I knew, hey, I'm not the most amazing person, I was putting out there that I'm the most amazing person, and the dichotomy between those two was frustrating and oftentimes would have me spiral. But there's this piece of I have to inflate my self-worth. Your self-worth is actually legit and real, so I have to actually bring that down so that my self-worth actually takes over. So it actually looks better to me and in my mind. Oftentimes, this is where narcissists ends up exaggerating other things, exaggerating what they do, what they've done, who they've been with, whatever it might be, to make themselves look better, to seem like they're in a better light. You might have seen this on a first date, where they're talking about all their achievements, successes, and they're at the place where they're just kind of pumping themselves up, and the conversation's only revolving around them. But what you'll see sometimes, especially in covert, is you might try to challenge them, or you might try to criticize them in one area. Hey, can I give some constructive feedback or something like that? And then it blows up. And you realize that this person gets really defensive and really hostile when something like this gets brought up. So it's one of the things to kind of be careful of and understand that when you're in a relationship with someone like this, a lot of times they cannot take criticism because they view any type of criticism as being a form of attack. It's not just the person across the table that you think is emotionally immature. They might actually be toxic, so please be careful about that. The second one that a lot of times people point out, and this is probably like the staple for like narcissism of what people normally like think of, besides the snapping selfies and it being all about them, the second thing they probably think of is lack of empathy, which is interesting because narcissists struggle to emphasize with others and to show concern for anybody. And typically there's no concern there at all because it's all about them, right? Like in a relationship, like any concern I had for another person was a direct reflection of me. So like if I was worried about the other person, like I wasn't worried necessarily they were safe. I was worried that they were out like leaving me, that they were out like rejecting me. I wasn't worried about what they were doing or saying or anything like that. I was worried about how that was going to reflect on me, how that was going to impact me. It all comes back around. And sometimes you'll find narcissists that are very quote unquote caring because they're like, oh, like let me care for you so much because of how it reflects back on them. Now, I think it's important to highlight that the majority of people say narcissists lack empathy. They're incapable. They don't have any empathy at all. And I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot more narcissists out there that have empathy, or at the very least, cognitive empathy. But the difference is their lack of willingness to being able to identify and acknowledge the needs of others. It's actually from the DSM-5. Like they are unwilling. Unwilling is the phrase. Unwilling to acknowledge or identify with the feelings and needs of others. And so like you need to understand like there is a point of like no return in like a conversation with a narcissist where you get so upset and where they realize like, oh, if I actually show empathy here, then I'm going to be the bad guy. Can't be the bad guy because it's all about me. So then I have to either walk away, scream and yell to try to fix the problem, like say forget you, do whatever, so I can actually avoid that accountability. So there's a lot of narcissists, I think, out there that have empathy, but they're unwilling to show it because of what it reveals about themselves. It's all circular. It's all back to the narcissist every single time. So this lack of empathy, like they may end up using like pieces of it to belittle, dismiss your feelings because your feelings don't matter. Like they don't actually count in the relationship. Or sometimes you'll see just a complete lack of remorse or even guilt over their actions. I think a lot of narcissists deal with different pieces of guilt and shame, but it's hidden really fast. It's compartmentalized, it's boxed up and pushed to the side so that they don't have to be accountable of the things that are actually going on. All right, so number 3, need for admiration. All about me, right? So you better praise me. You better love me. You better adore me. You better serve me. You better worship me. Worship, I think, is like a really good word. Some people don't like it, but I think it's a really good word when it comes to narcissists because that's part of it. It's like, I think there's a piece that like, I want you to worship me. Like in a relationship, I wanted that person to like make me the center of their universe because I was the center of my universe, further supporting the false reality that I was such an amazing person. Basically, I wanted that person to worship me. I wanted that feeling of someone coming up to me and just loving every single thing about me. Like literally that was like the concept, the idea. And so when you think of this, like narcissists want attention. They want praise from others. And a lot of times they'll go to great lengths to be able to seek that, to get the validation, get the approval, whatever they need. And there's this like need driving of like, please support my false reality versus actually being, this is who I actually am. But narcissists have this giant need for admiration. Like think of it this way. Narcissists sometimes they'll like fish for compliments of like expecting something from you, of like wanting you to give them certain type of compliments or demanding attention. Like you need to be responding within this amount of time. You need to be telling me where you're going. You need to have your location on for me. Like all this kind of stuff. Like they demand attention and then praise those around them. They're like attention and praise from people around them. And a lot of times they'll get angry. So angry or upset when they feel they're not receiving enough. So like when you're not giving narcissists enough attention, enough admiration, how dare you? You're just not in my life anymore. Like you make work a priority. You make your family a priority. I'm never a priority. All this kind of stuff. And you start to see slow spirals out of a narcissist that doesn't get the attention that they think they deserve. Okay. Jumping in. All right. Number 4. Let's see. Manipulative behavior. Narcissists are often termed as manipulators because typically they are. Manipulating, controlling behavior, trying to do whatever they can to control you and to be able to control to get what they want. You have to understand when we talk about control, there is aspects that narcissists want to control you for control's sake because they like it. They like dominating over someone else. They like control to be able to get what they want. But ultimately, I think a lot of the control goes back to their mask. Like, I want to control everyone's perception of the mask that I'm creating. I want to control everyone's version of that. Now, out of that concept, it means I control you to be the person I want you to be and to fit in the mold that I want you to fit. It means I control everyone else and their perception of me. It also means I control like the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm saying, and to other people to make sure it looks like what I want. And so there's a piece of like controlling what I want, controlling others, all go into this facade of I need to control the mask. And this is where you see gaslighting, emotional abuse, manipulation, triangulation, all these different things come to play, trying to make sure that they control you to protect the mask. Then we have like some of the manipulative behavior of like using this gaslighting to make you doubt your reality, your perception of what's actually going on. Like, you've been in the relationship and you've caught him with, scandalous texts or things that are going on. You're like, this doesn't make sense. And he blows it off of like, that's not a big deal. Like, that's just my work wife, right? Like, that's just someone that, I talk to every once in a while. There's nothing going on. Why would you think that? I'm faithful. All this stuff of gaslighting you to make you believe that you're crazy in what you actually saw. Or sometimes they're going to enrage out and have emotional abuse, name calling, withholding affection, et cetera, et cetera. All right, last one here, lack of accountability. Narcissists often refuse to take responsibility for their actions and blame other people for their mistakes. Like, I would always blame other people. It was never my fault. It was always someone else. There was always some other reason, but it couldn't be me. It's just impossible. Like, it's impossible for it to actually be my fault, my problem. It always had to be someone else. And so I'd always take that and put the blame on someone else. So I was the victim, and I was the victim of everybody else, but it wasn't my fault. Blaming other people, deflecting responsibility, like doing anything, then owning up to my actions. So narcissists a lot of times will do a lot of these different things. Typically, you have the grandiose sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy, need for admiration, manipulative behavior, and a lack of accountability. Now, if you're with someone right now and you're seeing these things happen on a consistent basis, I want you to reach out for help. One of the tools we've created to break you free from the mindset and from the trauma bond of being trapped with a narcissist is joining the Clarity Challenge. Like, if you suspect you're dealing with a narcissist in your life, it's important to take these steps to move forward and protect yourself. I want you to join the 45-day Clarity Challenge today. And go to claritychallenge.net to sign up, learn more about your healing, find clarity in your situation, and start to rewire your mindset that keeps you going back to this toxic person, thinking and wondering, do they actually care? Do they actually want me in their life? What is actually going on? So go to claritychallenge.net and sign up today. Are you wondering today if you're in a narcissistic relationship? Maybe you've heard the term narcissistic personality disorder. Maybe you've heard narcissistic abuse. Maybe you're like, what is a narcissist? Not sure. We're not going to dive into all that today. You have to watch another video. Sorry. But today we're going to walk into 10 red flags of narcissistic abuse and how to be able to actually spot some of these and to be able to protect yourself. If you're new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness about narcissistic abuse. I break people free from the trauma bonds, from the obsessiveness and the obsessive nature of thinking, ruminating about this person, wanting to go back to this person, this cycle of being with toxic people. That's actually how we help break people free every single day. And so you can see this and you can access this at claritychallenge.net. Would love to be able to help you out, moving you forward in your healing, growth, and development. So we're going to dive right in because we've got 10 of these that we got to knock out pretty quick to make sure I even get through them. Hopefully I can get through them all. So number one, excessive self-centeredness. Like, you have someone who is really, really self-centered about themselves and displaying this need of like, well, it has to be about me. Prioritizing his needs, prioritizing his desires above everything else. And so you're like he doesn't even seem interested in me. Now, maybe he seemed interested at the beginning of the relationship, but now you're like, no, he's definitely not interested in me at all. Okay. A lot of times it's because you don't really matter. You're just transactional to the other person. Like, he talks about his accomplishments, dismisses your concerns, dismisses what you want to bring up. You're like, oh, like, we're having a conversation. That means he can contribute, I can contribute. No. That means you're there to be able to praise him. He's got to be able to do what he wants to do. You just got to be able to support that. Okay. So that one of the toxic traits of narcissism, of one of the aspects. Okay. Just a red flag. Okay, it's not a trait of personality disorder. It's a red flag. All right, the other one, number 2, manipulative charm. Okay, so with this, like a narcissist oftentimes will use charm and charisma to draw you in, to make you feel like it's an amazing relationship. However, it oftentimes turns to manipulation. Okay, using it to control you, using it to exploit you even emotionally. Think of it this way, like you might get showered with compliments and support, but later it's using that to actually get you to be loyal to them or get you to do certain actions that you're not comfortable with. Consider this of even like pushing your boundaries or crossing over things that typically you wouldn't cross over, but he's been so nice to me in the past. Like he's showered me with compliments. He told me all these different things. So I must be the right person. I must be the soulmate for him. There's all different pieces of that. That's just like a quick overview. Okay. Number 3, lack of empathy. So this is almost like the flagship of narcissistic personality disorder. People like lack of empathy, narcissist. It's not always the case, but a lot of times you see a big piece is empathy being absent in narcissists. Maybe you go out to eat and this person doesn't have any connection or any empathy for like the waiter, like they're really rude. Or maybe you see they don't have empathy for like the dog or like their animals or like different people. You'll see it come up, but especially you're going to see it come up with you. It's like, I can't connect to your emotions. I can't put myself in your shoes. I can't like think about like your emotions, your feelings. I can't hold space for them. Too icky, too frustrating, don't want to deal with that. Okay, so a lot of times you'll find where narcissist starts to dismiss you. It starts to trivialize your pain, trivialize the things you're going through. And so like you might have a person that shows up and he shows like little concern about you, little concern. You confide in him about having this personal crisis and it shifts the conversation back to him. You're like, wait a second, like this was like I was trying to communicate like what I was going through. And he's like, man, like that really sucks. Like I remember when this happened to me, I remember this. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, the conversation's back on him and how it's affecting him when it gets all over the place. Okay, but the lack of empathy like impacts a lot of different things that you don't matter. Your feelings, your needs don't matter. All right, so number 4, constant criticism. Like belittling, degrading tones, like being able to put you down over and over and over. It's not just like this one-time thing. It's like a consistent thing. It's a thing that like makes you feel crazy over a period of time because it's like slowly been chipping away at your self-esteem, chipping away at who you actually are. And you feel like, I don't even know if I am worth it anymore. I don't even know, why can't I be good enough? Like, why doesn't he actually love me? Why doesn't he actually care? And he might be at a place where he's been constantly criticizing your choices. Maybe your different accomplishments, the things that have happened, and it leaves you feeling unworthy. Like it leaves you feeling anxious. Like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do now. I don't know if I can do this. And oftentimes people in narcissistic abuse no longer have any semblance of confidence anymore because it's been ripped away so much from the toxic individual, by the toxic individual from you. So moving into number 5, and this would be isolation pieces, isolation tactics. A lot of times a narcissist is going to isolate you even without ever saying no and without ever saying you can't go do this. Like a lot of times people think the narcissists do that. They don't. They typically are just adding different pieces of drama, of doubt, of just questioning into your life to make you think, maybe I shouldn't go hang out with my friends. Maybe I shouldn't connect as much with my family because they're a bad influence, or they're pulling me away from my spouse, or my spouse doesn't feel loved because I'm spending this much time with other people. And oftentimes narcissists are going to isolate you from friends and family. Now, the reason why they're doing this is because if they isolate you, you aren't going to hear people speak truth into your life. But what this does is it starts to make you dependent on the narcissist in your life. You start to think, this is the only person I can be with. This is the only interaction I can have. This is the main thing. Okay, and it starts to pull you away from anybody and everybody else. So it might be discouraging from spending time with friends or family, like slowly isolating you, like planting seeds of doubt. Did you hear what this person said about me? Did you hear what they said about you? Like I'm just uncomfortable. I'm not sure like what it is, but there just seems something wrong with this person. There seems to be something off. But they've been my friend for so long. Okay, yeah, I get that, but like I don't know. Just think about it. Like there'll be small things. Okay, like you need to understand it's like small subtle things. So then number 6 is you move into the emotional manipulation. Like narcissists use these tactics to try to control you and to try to manipulate you into thinking and feeling a certain thing. Like this is where narcissists like plays with your emotions, like pokes and prods you because like if I do this, I will get a response. If I do this, I will get you to do X, Y, and Z. Like this might just be simply putting you in a state of confusion. If You're in a state of confusion. You're not going to leave. You're not going to get free. You're going to stay stuck. This could be guilt tripping you, making you feel bad for making decisions for you or for someone else, but not for him. All of this to maintain power and control over you. So you might have this where he used guilt tripping to make you feel responsible for his happiness, even when it meant sacrificing your own happiness, your own well-being, your own sense of boundaries, whatever it might be. So you're going to see narcissists that use this so often in the relationship. And then we're going to move into point number 7, gaslighting and distortion. Like distorting your current version of reality. Narcissist is going to try to switch this and change this around to distort your reality, making you doubt your perceptions, your feelings, and ultimately you questioning your sanity. Like, am I actually crazy or not? Because I saw this happen. And he's like, that didn't happen. What are you talking about? That didn't even exist. I didn't say that. I didn't do that. Denying it, switching it around so he can avoid accountability. Think about it this way. He'll deny past actions, even when there's clear evidence, even when you see this happened. You said this, you slept with this person, you talked to this person, you did this, you lied about this. It makes you question your own memory, keeps you in the fog. All right, another red flag is financial exploitation. And so you find yourself where you start to be contributing more in the relationship than what he is. And then you start to realize like he never has money. You start to realize all the money he does have tends to disappear. You start to see where he's exploiting you. So many times narcissists will get with someone to run their money dry. Once they've run their money dry, they'll pull away and then continue to move on to the next person. Like depleting your resources, using you just for financial gain. Like you might have this in a business partner, you might have this in a regular partner, in a relationship where you've been investing money into businesses, into like stocks, into different housing, like all this type of stuff, but it's all been for him to be able to get what he wanted from you. Maybe you've been co-signing on stuff, co-signing an apartment, co-signing on his truck. Like all these things happen so often, and you do it just being like, oh, we're together. This is the thing that we need to do. And he's convinced you of this until it gets to the place that you break up and he's got what he wants and you're left holding the bill. Okay, so please be careful about this. The other red flag, number 9, unpredictable emotional roller coaster, the highs and the lows, the ups and the downs. Like you're going to experience this giant roller coaster, not just like a small one in like regular relationships, but a giant one of alternating between love bombing, like excessive affection, love and attention, and oftentimes devaluation, like emotional cruelty of like, let me put you down, let me say like you're worthless, let me move forward, and like, I don't want this relationship anymore. And then it goes back and forth. You might have already seen this in the relationship with the ups and downs of getting together, breaking up, getting together, breaking up, getting together, breaking up. You say something, oh, that offends me. I can't do this anymore. I'm out. And all of a sudden it creates this push-pull. And you're like, well, wait, what about, well, wait. And it keeps you coming back for more. It builds this like addictive, like rubber band approach where he's constantly pulling away and then snapping you back, pulling you away and then snapping you back over and over and over again. All right, so then let's move on then to number 10. And this piece is just simply a lack of accountability. You're going to have this in a narcissistic relationship where he doesn't take accountability or responsibility for his actions and the things that he's done. And so narcissists typically don't take accountability for actions and rarely even apologize. Oftentimes an apology might be like, I'm sorry that I did that and it hurt you, or I'm sorry that you felt that way, but not an actual like, I apologize, I'm sorry that I did this, and I'm not going to do this again. Like actually seeing changed behavior. Otherwise, it's just manipulation. An apology without changed behavior is just manipulation. Narcissists will deflect. They'll blame others. They'll put things on other people and avoid actually acknowledging their faults. So you bring something up and they're like, well, what about this? What about this? You're like, I'm just talking about you for a moment. Well, yeah, but this, and is always trying to move it away from themselves. So that was like super quick. Hopefully like you got something out of it. If you did, leave a comment down below of like which one resonated the most with you or which one you've seen in your relationship. If I can be of help, please go to rawmotivation.com. You can grab a one-on-one there. Otherwise, would love to be able to help you move forward in your healing by jumping in one of the challenges. The 45-day clarity challenge is one of the most impactful ones we have that's helping you actually liberate yourself mentally and emotionally from toxicity. Do you know your narcissistic red flags? Maybe you've been watching for a while and you're like, I think I know. All right, we're going to test you out today because I want to give you a couple different red flags and see how you do. If you guys are new here and you don't know who I am, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist. I'm a founder of Raw Motivations, creator of the Narc app, and the 45-day Clarity Challenge. Today, we're going to give you a quiz on red flags with a narcissist, and we'll see how you do. The goal is to be able to help you have awareness on toxicity and to be able to get you clarity free from the confusion and the crazy making of being with that toxic person. So diving in, we're going to have 10 red flags today to be able to talk through. I want you to listen carefully and write down below which ones you've personally experienced, which ones have actually happened. All right, let's dive in. Let's see how you do. Okay. Number 1, red flag. Your feelings don't matter. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, it doesn't really matter. You're left in confusion, oftentimes panic. There's a huge aspect of anxiety and worry, but it doesn't really matter because what matters is that other person. Yours don't match up. Yours don't apply. Yours don't count. Number 2, red flag. Is a lot of times you'll see a narcissist complain about other people to you all the time. But the thing is, they won't complain to that person's face. They won't actually tell them. They'll be like, oh my gosh, you're the greatest person ever. Can you believe that person? I hate this person. You know, it'll go back and forth, okay? So they'll complain to you about all the people out there, not to their face. And oftentimes, after they've gotten away from you or broken up from you or something like that, they go back to those people. Maybe that's a crazy ex. Maybe that's, a family that they said was awful. Like all these friends that they, shunned while they were with you that they go right back to. And they've got you into the place of being like, oh, like I'm special because I'm their confidant because they're telling me all these things. But they're complaining about all these people, but not to their face. It goes back and forth. It gets really confusing. Okay, that's number 2. That was a little confusing, but it's okay. We're moving on. Number 3, arrogant. Okay, simple. How much of a person is showing arrogancy, pride, all this kind of stuff that's like, oh, I'm the best. Okay, and oftentimes in the relationship, because at the first little bit, it's a little bit more like, wait a second, they're actually like humble. Like they actually seem to be open. They seem to be vulnerable. And then you get to a place where you start to see like, no, like they actually think that they're superior. They're actually talking down to me. They're actually belittling me. There's a little bit of these passive aggressive, like faux compliments that's making me feel better, but like, oh, it hurts at the same time. Like those kind of things popping in there. So arrogant, but then all of a sudden, wait a second. No, they're actually looking at themselves as being more superior. Number 4. Entire life being consumed with that person. Now, this is different than just someone being like madly in love, okay? This is actually going to the next level of like, wait a second, everything's consumed with this person. As a result, they're all that you talk to, and they start to isolate you from the people that you love and care about. This could be isolating you from, your friends, your family. This could have you cancel plans with them because, oh, now we have plans, or they wanted to do this with me instead, and you drop everything in your life to be able to spend time with this person because they want to spend time with you, and it's like, wait, that's the whole life, like everything, like consumed. Number 5, cold, hot, attention, ignore, everything like up and down. Like always like, wait a second, they like me, they don't like me. They love me, they're leaving. Like they're paying attention to me, they ghosted me. Like they're one way in private and then they're a different way in public. Like you're always going back and forth. Like what is actually real, what is actually not, and you get to a place where you're always confused of like, I don't know. Like, are we together? Are we not together? Like, what is actually going on? Number 6, often having pity parties. Okay? They behave abusive and then be like, oh, like this is just because of, stuff that happened. Like my behavior is because of the things that I've been through. Like I was abused as a kid. That's why I yell at you now. Like I was like this happened to me. I lost this person. So this is why I throw things. Like there's so many different things of like my behavior is because of something. It's never because of them. It's never their responsibility. So it's like, woe is me. Like you should pity me. You should have, guilt towards me. Like all this kind of stuff. It's all like back on me. Okay. Oftentimes in this kind of scenario, you'll see people that are like, yeah, I just totally hate drama. And they're like, but you always seem to be at the center of it. Food for thought. All right. Number 7, hidden abuse. And you see, oftentimes narcissists will come into your life and they'll slowly start to erode your identity
and make you feel lost. Get you to the place that you don't actually know who you are. You no longer have any clarity of your purpose or your vision or your values or what you actually love or hate. Instead, it's just kind of like, I'm just existing. Because that abuse is very slow and very ramped up. Like getting to the place of like, wait a second, like I don't even know who I am anymore. Like I'm struggling to put together sentences, and I'm struggling to put together my thoughts, and I'm struggling to actually like show up and be the person that everybody knows me to be because I've been with this person and it feels like it's all sucked away. Number 8 is triangulation. Oftentimes, this is where narcissists will surround a lot of people around you and around them to make you think that they need all this attention, to make you think that you have to vie for their attention, to make you think that they're always in high demand, that there's everybody, like people are always trying to get my time and everything, so you should be grateful for the pieces that I give. And then as a result, I'll talk to other people, they'll start getting mad at you, you'll start getting mad at them, like or start manipulating the board, and all of a sudden you find yourself like upset at other people that you've never even met. Or upset at other things, and you're like, wait a second, like I haven't even evaluated that. I don't even know if that's true. That's just what that person, the toxic person, told me. Number 9, easily bored. See, a lot of narcissists are, high in adrenaline junkies. Not just like adrenaline, like let me jump off building, but adrenaline of like, I want to be able to control a situation. I want something that's going to give me a high from supply, from people, from things, from work, from object, from money, anything like that. I want to be able to find something that makes me feel better about myself so I don't have to look at the stuff that's inside. As a result, a lot of times narcissists are going after different stimulation, different highs, different praise, different admiration, all these different things to try to be able to hide the fact of the emptiness inside. Which is why a lot of times you'll find a narcissist that oftentimes will hardly ever be alone. It's like, why would I want to be alone with myself and have to deal with myself? That's way too scary. So like, hey, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go be with someone else. Or I'm going to always be with someone so I don't have to deal with who I am. It's like, wait, okay, if you're not interested, then I'll go be with someone else. Like I'm always got to have someone in the wings of the play to make sure that I have supply, I have people, I have things that can make me feel better about myself. Okay, so it's easily bored. And number 10, last but not least, would be number 10, cracks in their mask. And this would be when you're going through life with this person, when you're interacting, you see different aspects of being really nice and then really mean. It's kind of like the back and forth, but you're like, wait a second, like the person that charmed me for so long now is just giving me harm. Like the person that was super nice is now digressing with a lot of these different fights. It just doesn't seem to add up. This is the hard part for a lot of people, is it develops cognitive dissonance, which enables a trauma bond, which enables people being stuck for long periods of time because they're like, I don't know which I should actually believe. Do I believe their words or do I believe their actions? Do I believe the mask or do I believe what I'm seeing every once in a while? We're going over those 10. How'd you do? Did you know these? And it was like one and there was like a lot, okay? How many of those have you seen or how many of those have you experienced yourself? Okay? How many of you have? Leave a comment down below so other people can see that they're not alone. More people need to understand that they're not alone, and to be able to find themselves after being with this craziness helps when we have a community of people to be able to say, hey, I've experienced that too. I've experienced that too. If you're wondering, how do I actually find myself after dealing with all this? After dealing with the craziness, the confusion, how do I actually deal with that? I want to announce that we've just released our 45-day Clarity Challenge. You can go to claritychallenge.net, and there's a place where you can learn to change your life, to find yourself after the toxic person. Whether you're with the toxic person or gone from toxic person, doesn't really matter. It just means, hey, you need to find yourself because you haven't found yourself for the longest period of time because they've isolated you, they've manipulated you, they've changed your life, your perspective, all these different things. You need to find yourself since you've been with a toxic person. If you need a community along that path to try to be able to help you move forward, to heal, grow, and change, cap.com. Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Community. It's a recovery community to help you progress forward in your healing journey into a growth mindset as you continue to invest in you and become more equipped with courses, with knowledge, with tracking, with community, with monthly coaching and weekly lives to help you progress forward in your healing journey. If you want to talk to me sometime one-on-one, you can go to rawmotivations.com. You can click on one-on-ones. We can talk through coaching options to be able to help you live free and live full after you've been with a toxic person. is Ben Taylor signing off. I hope you live your life authentically, grow, heal, and change from that toxicity.
Were you with a person that made everything seem great until one day it wasn't? Were you with a person that maybe you noticed later on in the relationship that you were wearing rose-colored glasses and you were being duped or being susceptible to the things that they were doing, and you didn't see, you didn't notice, you didn't realize? And a lot of times when people wear rose-colored glasses and they meet a toxic person or a person with narcissistic traits, is you'll have that person walk you out into the middle of a field and you're looking at all these flags, almost like a carnival. And when you start to take the rose-colored glasses off, you realize that a lot of those flags are all red. Red flags that are actually there warning you of attributes and traits and ideas and thoughts that the other person is putting out there that you didn't realize in the moment that this person was going to be bad for you. Was going to be toxic, was going to hurt, was going to devalue, was going to discard you. And a lot of times when we're getting into a toxic relationship or a person with narcissistic personality disorder, there's a lot of red flags that we don't see, or that we see and we excuse, or we don't engage with because we don't want to believe that about someone else, or we try to give another reason why it's okay. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness, growth, healing, and change. And do that on multiple platforms, just providing free content out there. So feel free to look at TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn to be able to see some of the content that we put out on a day-to-day basis, just to help give you an idea of what narcissism is, what it looks like, and also to help you on your healing, growth, and journey that we're going through. We're also on the Narc app. If you haven't had a chance, download that, check it out. You can learn about the 9 personality traits of narcissism personality disorder. You can take classes, courses on there. There's a lot of different things that are coming onto there as well. Engage with community, ask advice. A great way to be able to get the monthly coaching, the weekly lives that are just inside the app. We'd love to have you be part of that community. If you don't follow already, follow on any of those platforms. Just look up Raw Motivations, whether you're watching on video, whether you're listening on the podcast. Either way, thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right into red flags with a narcissist. So a lot of times you have red flags, right? You have flags that pop up in the relationship, and especially at the beginning of the relationship, that you don't really realize, or you excuse away, or it's like, no, they're not that bad. Like it's not that big a deal. So we're going to look at a couple red flags today. One of the ones that pops up that just ties in with narcissism as a whole is that selfishness, that attention seeking, that entitlement, that admiration aspect that a lot of times you'll see in some of the first dates, some of the first interactions. You'll see sometimes that selfishness of like looking for fulfillment and validation from you when you've just met the person, when you're not really sure, getting to know them or anything like that. And they're dropping small, subtle hints of like how good they are or how they want you to praise them. Sometimes you'll get through the conversation, you realize like, wow, like a lot of the conversation hasn't been, me even telling my story or me even saying anything about me. It's been a lot about them, or it's been a lot about like their past or different people. And it starts to just give you like an idea. It's not necessarily saying, oh, this person's a narcissist. It's just saying like, hey, here's something to be aware of. Here's something to kind of watch out for. Sometimes you'll see the aspect of boundary breaking. Narcissists are prone to want to break your boundaries. Typically how I describe it is for a narcissist looking at a boundary and viewing a boundary. A narcissist views a boundary as prison or a challenge that I need to break out of, that I need to accomplish or get past or break down your defenses to win. And so a narcissist will work really hard to break through those boundaries. However, in a healthy relationship, someone's going to respect those boundaries because they understand that boundaries are meant for protection. They're not prison. But oftentimes you'll have a narcissist that will come into your life and that will start trying to break down and erode the boundaries that you've put in place. Those boundaries are for you, but the narcissist will try to make it about them. Why would you do this? Like, why would you tell us that we can't do this? Like, why? And question and slowly work on eroding that down. A lot of times that'll appear in like teasing and like testing boundaries, of getting close to a boundary of something that you want or you don't want in your life, and getting close to that to see how you're going to react. And when you don't react, they're like, that either is a boundary they don't care about, or that's a boundary that I don't have to apply, that it doesn't apply to me. Let me just go ahead and move past it. Let me get past whatever boundary they have, and I can do whatever I want. Sometimes they'll use it with like tiny bit of like belittling, of like trying to give the idea that your boundary is really childish. Like your boundary is too masculine. Your boundary is too toxic. Like your boundary is really selfish. And when you get upset or when you try to hold those boundaries and then you start like getting upset because they're crossing those boundaries and breaking them, what do they say? They call you too sensitive. You're too sensitive. You're overthinking this. And a lot of times they'll try to minimize that aspect of a boundary. If you're developing a boundary, keep in mind really quick that a boundary is not meant for other people. A boundary is not meant for anybody else out there. A boundary is meant for you. And as a result, it applies to all your relationships, healthy and toxic. But a boundary for you is the level of how much shit you're going to tolerate. How much screaming you're going to tolerate at you. How much cheating you're going to tolerate. How many lies you're going to tolerate. Like, that's what that boundary is for, is saying, hey, like, if you want to keep lying, that's totally fine. You're just not going to do it in my relationship. And I'm going to go ahead and keep moving the direction I need to move and not adhere to what you're putting out there. Not adhere to the lies you're having. See, that's a boundary that's not controlling the other person. You can lie if you want, but it's not going to be with me. That's really what a boundary is supposed to look like. A boundary is meant for yourself, not for other people, because it's about you, of how you're going to protect and grow and heal yourself moving forward. But a narcissist will try to break those boundaries and tear them down. A lot of times you'll hear a narcissist maybe early on in the relationship, but a lot of times all through the relationship talk about crazy people in their past. Maybe crazy exes, maybe how like an ex was super jealous or super addictive on them. Maybe how they had an ex that was bipolar or alcoholic or schizophrenic or like anything like that. They'll start making up a lot of stories and you're like, wait a second, like it seems like every ex you've been with, it seems like a lot of your family, it seems like a lot of your friends have been labeled as crazy in your life. Like, what's going on with that? Because you have to think, if they were with someone, just one person or 5 people that were crazy, there's really 2 things. Either what's wrong with their judgment that they got together with someone who was crazy or who was toxic, or what's wrong with the person that's crazy probably came from the person that they were with. But oftentimes we'll excuse that, or we'll just get used by that because it's an act of, a lot of times, triangulation. You know, if my ex was super crazy, she would always judge me for my money spending. What that does is sends you the message, don't say anything about money. You know, my ex is always super confrontational. Like, I just wanted to be able to like get along with her, but like she was like super confrontational. Every single thing always had to be an argument. Tells you right then and there, arguing is not acceptable. Triangulation. Sometimes you'll see it in an aspect of like speed dating. Narcissistic relationships move really fast and they're compacted. Think of it like you spend one day, it's almost like a week. You spend like a week, it's almost like a month. Spend a month, sometimes it can feel like a year. And the results from that show that, because people that break up with a narcissist, discard a narcissist, or get discarded by, sometimes take twice and 5 times as long to get over that person. Especially if they don't have the tools for healing to be able to help adjust the clarity and get to the place of saying, hey, let me rewire my mindset so I understand what just happened. Because it feels like crazy making. But they'll be super fast a lot of times to move in, to get engaged, to say I love you, to have a baby, whatever it might be. A lot of times they push those lines. And you have to be careful. And a lot of times in a relationship, you have to learn how to say no for those boundaries. And you also have to slow it down and see how the other person is going to react. That's when they start testing those boundaries even more. Another red flag is seeing the idea of provoking jealousy and envy. A lot of times you'll see a narcissist manufacture emotions in you. It comes to the fact of like triangulation. Again, back to previous partners or parents or friends. And what it does is it makes you doubt your place. It can even make you jealous of like talking about an ex-girlfriend, but then being unwilling to define if you're a girlfriend or not. They could be talking about like the past and, you know, a boyfriend that she was with that she absolutely like loved and created. And then you're wondering like, well, am I not good enough? Like where do I fit into this picture? A lot of times they'll use it with triangulation and making you doubt your place and wonder, how do I match up to the competition? Like, I'm supposed to be with this person, but it feels like I'm competing with their mom. It feels like I'm competing with their ex. Not even in our lives. Oftentimes what that leads to is more comparison to others. Another red flag. Comparisons to the ex, the friends, the family, and that helps build that jealousy and build that aspect in your mindset of like, maybe I'm inferior to what they're saying. Like, I'm not as good in the bed. I'm not as good with my job. I'm not as good with relationships. Like, maybe that's me. This slowly brings you down. Couple things you'll see sometimes as a red flag is cracks in the mask. That good person that you saw at the beginning of the relationship, or that good person that you're experiencing now as you're going out, as you're dating, and all of a sudden you notice an interaction or a reaction that seems out of character. Maybe it's how they just yelled at their niece. Maybe it's how they just kicked the dog. Maybe it's how they just got upset in traffic, and you're just like, well, wait a second. Sometimes what you're seeing is you're seeing a glimpse of what's actually behind the mask. It's just hidden for societal means or for to look better. But sometimes when you see that tiny little bit of acting out of character, there might be something more there. And the last red flag I wanted to bring up is the idea that when you're with a narcissist, you end up having the narcissist become your life. Like, that's it. Like, that's your source of validation. That's your source of income. That's your source of supply, as far as like being able to understand, hey, this person is the only person that I can have. Because a narcissist will get to the place where they treat you as their only supply and they make you isolated. And then they go out and do everything else with everybody else. But like, they get to a place where they keep you isolated from your friends, from your family, and you start isolating yourself just to be there for them. When they call you up and they're expected to answer right away, or when they call you up and you're expected to go or do or be or whatever it might be, that isolation happens. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of times, you get to the place where you start to sacrifice everything in your life, relationships, friendships, work, all different types of things. You sacrifice a lot of things in your life for the narcissist, but it's all one-sided. Maybe you're wondering today if your partner is a narcissist. Like, you feel like you're walking on eggshells around him. Like, you can't say a certain thing, you can't do a certain thing, you can't dress a certain way, you can't listen to certain music, all because it's what he wants in that moment. Like, maybe you're questioning, am I actually worthy enough? Like, am I good enough? You might be at the place where you're wondering, like, is this all that love is? Like, is this as good as it gets? Because this seems really awful. This seems really, really bad in the moment. And you might be questioning your own value. You might be questioning your own worth. Is that where you are today? Are you struggling with that in this moment where this other person has made you feel this way over and over and over again? You might be dealing with a narcissist. We're going to dive into some of the things and some of the topics about narcissism and some of the red flags that you might see, that you might have seen, or you might be like, oh, I didn't see that. And let's start talking a little bit more. At the end of this, I want to be able to encourage you to be able to move forward in your healing process. To be able to rewire the story that you believe that's locking you into a fiction or a fantasy or a false reality that's keeping you trapped in a toxic relationship, and you're unclear about which direction to actually go. That's going to be going into the 45-day clarity challenge to systematically set you free from the stories that you believe, from the toxicity that you're stuck in, from the trauma bond that you don't realize that you're stuck in. So when we talk about narcissistic personality disorder, I want to bring up some of the red flags. Some of the common behaviors, some of the traits, some of the different things that are there that people normally miss or that people normally struggle with. One of them is easy to see and easy to explain away. And that's the sense of self-importance. Like, how good am I? How amazing am I? The grandiosity of, like, this is who I am. A lot of times people explain this away, especially early on in the relationship, as just being emotionally immature. Like, he just doesn't really know. He doesn't really get it yet, of like, he hasn't had enough life experience. Like, there's not a piece there of like, oh, I get this, I don't get this. And there's a piece that people are like, let me lock into this person and help them. Like, maybe it's my calling to actually help them become more mature, to help them grow in this area. Oftentimes they're going to have a sense of exaggerated like self-importance and grandiosity in like what they do. You'll see this typically in like the job environment of like, I'm so amazing, my coworkers are idiots. Like, they're really, really stupid, but I'm really good at what I do. And then you're like, how come you've had like 4 jobs in like the past year? Well, that's because my boss didn't understand me. That's because, and you'll see this like kind of like puffed upness. Okay. Now you're going to see this a lot inside of grandiose narcissists, where they typically look like the one person that's like the asshole in the room. I look this way in a lot of times in the work environment. I was like, I knew everything. I thought I was the best. And so as a result, I put everybody down. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, you're stupid. Like, all these things that I would put other people down to be able to show my dominance, my power, my control. Even though I might not know what I was talking about, I would make it up. I would figure out whatever I'd have to say to still look good, to still look like I knew what I was talking about, because I had to be in charge. I had to be the person that showed up with no weakness, no vulnerability. I just did every single day. And that was something that ultimately destroyed a lot of the business friendships and relationships that I had because of how I was handling it, because of what I was looking at. But you're going to see this a lot of times where narcissists will demand your attention, your admiration of like, you need to pay attention to me. Like, think of it this way. Like, early in the relationship, it seems really, really sweet where you're texting 24/7, right? Like, you're always texting, you're always talking, you're always calling, and then it slowly starts to pull back. Because there's a level of it that's not healthy. There's a level of it that's almost like obsessive, of like how much the communication is happening. You see some of the best relationships out there, they're not glued to the hip 24/7. They're not texting 24/7, calling each other 24/7. There's a period of being together and then apart, and together and apart. Not relationship-wise, but just in proximity. And a lot of times you'll see a narcissist that wants that attention 24/7, constantly. Like, if you're not responding to his text like instantly, like, there's an issue. Like, now you're getting blown up. Of like, where are you? What's going on? Who are you with? Are you cheating on me? Like, all of a sudden these things start attacking you and you're like, all I was doing is like helping someone for a minute or going to the bathroom or placing an order, like whatever it might be. Like, you're just like, what is going on? And this piece of like, they need to have that. They want to have that. If you don't give that, like, there starts to be this rub here. Sometimes you're going to see like different pieces of belittling. And early on, you're not typically going to see it towards you in the exact moment. It's typically going to be towards someone else. So like talking down about coworkers, their boss, maybe you're going to see it at like a restaurant with like a waiter or waitress of like, oh, how they're talking, like the degrading comments. It's like these small things, and oftentimes these small things to make themselves look better or to feel better about themselves. And you start to notice, you're like, that wasn't very kind. Like, why did you say that? Like, did you really mean to say that about your parents? Like, why is this going on? And you start to realize that this is actually something that's happening more than what you realize underneath the surface about everybody, and then also about you. We also talk a lot of times with narcissism about lack of empathy. And a lack of empathy is a huge piece of not being able to understand like your feelings and your needs. I knew from a young age that I connected differently. Like, I didn't connect with you. I didn't understand you. I didn't understand the other person at all, where they were coming from. If I hadn't experienced it, then it really didn't exist. So like getting into marriage and my wife dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you just need to trust God better. Like, you just need to move past it. I didn't view it as any level of being true or having any validity because I hadn't experienced it. So it didn't exist. Only thing that existed in my mind was my current reality, the fantasy, the fiction that I'd produced to be that person. So anything else didn't really matter, didn't really exist. All I cared about was me in those moments. And so a big piece of empathy is trying to be able to understand where another person's coming from. Now, the other piece with narcissism is not just understanding where another person's coming from, but for a narcissist actually caring where that person is coming from. And there's a lot of times that narcissists can understand where you're coming from because they'll use that to manipulate. They'll use that to feign empathy. They'll use that to show up false, like fake vulnerability of like, oh, this is who I am. This is how it is. But what they're not actually connecting with is that piece there of what you're going through and actually being willing to do something about it or being willing to actually show compassion. Instead, it's like, that sucks, but okay. Like, there's not this piece of like, oh, I want to be able to help you. It's like, okay, when could we shut off the waterworks? When could we stop the crying? I just need to go to sleep. Who cares if you're upset? At the end of the day, it's all about the narcissist and what he wants in that moment. You'll see this typically like as an example of like when you get your feelings and your emotions and your needs dismissed. They don't matter. They don't count. And you feel like, I'm sorry I even brought anything up. Like, I shouldn't have even said anything to you. And the narcissist in the back of the mind would be like, yeah, you're right. You shouldn't have. Because like, I don't actually want to deal with that. Going to see manipulation and control. And that's like a huge piece of it. That's another like red flag of them trying to control you. So oftentimes narcissists will try to control what you wear, like what you listen to, how you look, sometimes modeling you after a previous ex, sometimes making you look a certain way for their image of how they want to be perceived. It's not always going to be, you can't wear this, but it'll be like small comments. Are you really going to go out in that? Like, that kind of makes you look fat in this area. Like, there's going to be small things that are not necessarily like, oh, you're a bad person, but is slowly going to put you in a place of ultimate isolation. Isolation from yourself, of knowing who you are, of the connection to yourself, of having that self-confidence, self-esteem, and isolation from other people. If you go through life and you start realizing, wait a second, like my friends, my circle is getting smaller and smaller, not because I want it to be smaller and smaller, but because of the person that I'm with. Maybe make you feel guilty about actually going out with friends or being willing to engage with family. And you're like, this is who I am. You knew this but I want to keep this all in house. Like, I don't want you to be sharing our personal things with other people. Like, I want this. And there becomes these small, tiny reasons to keep you there, to keep you stuck. A huge one is lack of accountability. Narcissist does not like to take accountability for the shit that they've done. Period. Like, a narcissist doesn't want to say, I did wrong. I did wrong. I am sorry. Will you please forgive me? And like, they won't do that unless there's a way that they can manipulate it for their own needs. Typically, this aspect of accountability and responsibility that a narcissist runs away from. They don't want to hold themselves accountable of what's actually going to happen. So typically what you're going to see is him blame it on you. It's your fault. You're the one that looked at my phone and you found that I was cheating. So that's your fault because you invaded my privacy. If you hadn't looked, you wouldn't be crying right now. You wouldn't be upset. So this is actually your fault. It's your fault that we're not going on vacation because you chose to do X, Y, and Z. Like, they're always going to flip it around. You will spend more of your time trying to justify why it's not your fault than realizing how crazy it sounds that this person's accusing you of something that was never your fault or your responsibility to even start off with. Narcissists a lot of times will use this in the cheating relationship. You didn't give me my needs, so that's why I cheated on you. You didn't do what I wanted you to do, so that's why I went out and got it somewhere else. You'll see a lot of weak-ass men that come to the table and they're like, you didn't give me my needs, so I'm going to go away and I'm going to go cheat on you. Like, these people are not men. These people are cowards. And they run away from actually showing up as a man, truthful and honest in the relationship to work on it. But instead, all that matters is their needs. I'm going to say something that maybe will shock people. If you don't have sex, you won't die. That's like a big piece that like men want to be like, if I don't have this, I'm going to die. No, you're not. You're just going to show up like less than a man because you're not actually willing to engage with your family in a way that's actually going to provide emotional safety so that you have an intimate connection with someone else. Little side note there. Take it for what you want. Last one that we're going to talk about is jealousy, possessiveness. A lot of times narcissists will be jealous of you, of your connections with other people, of your relationships with other people, of your level that you are in your business and in having different money, all this kind of stuff. And it's also going to come out in a possessiveness. With the possessiveness, the biggest thing I want you to hear is a narcissist typically believes that they own you. Where you go, what you do, how you act, how you interact, it's all is about them. Okay, but it all is about them having control over you. Now, a narcissist doesn't just control you just to control you. Typically, it's to control you to be able to keep their mask intact. They have to be able to isolate you so you don't go out and tell other people that they're a shitty person. Like, they have to be able to keep you there so that you are able to stay as their main supply. Narcissist thinks that they own you, which is one of the reasons why a narcissist typically doesn't think that you're ever going to leave. Oftentimes, they just tell you that, and they just show you that. Like, I'm your ride and die. Like, we're going to stay together forever. You're never going to be able to get rid of me because I love you so much. And you start to believe these things over a period of time. You start to believe that maybe this person does care. Maybe they do love. Maybe you are signed on for life. When in reality, a lot of times they're just using this to be able to keep you locked into a relationship so they can continue abusing, so you can continue cheating, so you can continue doing what they want to do in that moment instead of actually having communication and honesty. If you're at a place where you're not in a relationship where your partner is being honest, vulnerable, and showing consistent change, you do not have a relationship. You have a fantasy. You have a fiction. You have a false reality that you're trying to believe. If you're at the place where you feel like, hey, what you've described, I live. What you describe is the stuff that I'm stuck in. Then you need to go to the Clarity Challenge. The 45-day Clarity Challenge that has daily systematic process of you investing in you to break free of the fog, to get out of the abusive relationship in your mind, mentally, emotionally, to be able to set yourself in a place of power and certainty of who you are, of the direction you want to go, of the person that you're meant to be. Go to claritychallenge.net to start understanding how you can break free, how you can move forward. It's going to be one of the most intensive ways for you to be able to see the truth, for you to be able to see the truth that will set you free and that will ultimately get you to the place of understanding with clarity and certainty who you are and ultimately the direction you want to go. Go to claritychallenge.net to sign up today. What's a popular red flag for a toxic person? Well, I want you to think about gaslighting and crazy making. Do you know what those are?
So gaslighting, sometimes people don't have an idea. So gaslighting came from an older film where it's the idea that you communicate something to someone so often, or you show them or demonstrate something so often that they start to believe something that's not true. Even more so to the fact that you have them believe something that you know to be true or that they know to be true, but you tell them it's false. Okay? Gaslighting could be as simple as me saying, I am not wearing a blue shirt. And you're like, yeah, you're wearing a blue shirt. Of course it's a blue shirt. Be like, no, like I'm not wearing a blue shirt. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is not a blue shirt. And the person's like, but you're wearing a blue shirt. I see the blue shirt on you. Like, there's no way you can say like it's not a blue shirt and be like, yeah, like I can, because I'm not wearing a blue shirt. Like, I'm not sure what's going through your head right now, but like this is not blue. So there might be something wrong with your eyesight, or there might be something wrong with your perception, but in all reality, like this is not a blue shirt. So like I don't understand what your problem is. Be like, I can see, like I understand this is a blue shirt. Like, why won't you understand? Why won't you admit that it's a blue shirt? It's not a blue shirt. And that back and forth kind of happens in a relationship, not just over something like petty, like the color of my shirt, but over like big things. And those big things could be cheating. They could be finding something on the computer or something on the phone. They could be how you're treating another person, how they're treating you. Could be all these different things that match up to an idea of being a giant red flag when it comes to dealing with a toxic person, when they're saying that something is not true when you know that it is. Did you ever have that when you're in like a conversation and someone says something and then later you recount it and you're like, yeah, you said this, and they're like, I didn't say that, and you go back and forth and you're just like confused. You're just like, I don't understand, like what's going on. I had this happen when I was in the relationship with the girl who had BPD and narcissistic traits. We went through a period of time where we got together and we watched movies, and we watched the Pirates of the Caribbean, like all the movies, like back to back, like one a week in one sense. And during this time got to a place where she knew it, I knew it, other people knew that like these movies had happened, and months down the road mentioned to her, like, yeah, do you remember like when we did this? And she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, we watched the movies together. And she's like, no, we didn't. Like, I haven't watched those with you. And I'm like, I feel like I'm going crazy. I'm like, no, like I remember like we watched them. And she's like, no, like maybe with someone else, but like I wasn't there. Like that didn't happen. I'm like, no, it definitely did, because I remember. I was like, you were there, like so-and-so was there, so-and-so was there, like I remember, and like these people remember that happened. And even other people chimed in, they were like saying like, yeah, like this happened, don't you remember? And they were like, no, like it didn't happen. And it was making me like doubt myself, making me think like I'm crazy. And I even went back and I was like, no, like remember, like we couldn't find this one on different streaming platforms, so like actually had to get the DVD, like here's the DVD, like I couldn't get it open, like there's this whole thing that I remember doing. But the other person was like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, that didn't even happen. Like, you're sounding crazy because that didn't even happen. That's what that gaslighting looks like, demonstrates, feels. When you're in the moment and you're striving and you're grasping for something, you're like, I know this is real. But the other person is like, no, it's not. And it makes you start to doubt like your reality, your perception of like, am I actually seeing what's going on here? Am I able to trust myself with my gut, with my intuition, with my eyesight, with what I'm hearing? I had a client that I was talking to on one-on-one, and they got to the place where they were having a discussion in the kitchen, and they had securities cameras. And the person said something, and they were like, I can't believe you just said that. And they were like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't say that. They took the iPad and like pulled it up and like played the video for the other person and said like, listen. And they played the video. And the person could hear what they said, and they looked at him and said, I didn't say that. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, it's right here. Like, I can see you. I can see your lips moving. I can hear the words that's coming out of your mouth. And she hit play again. She was like, listen. He's like, no, I didn't say that. Like, she's saying, so like the camera's wrong, like the video's wrong. He's like, yeah, I didn't say that. So much to the point that she had to take the iPad to her friends, to her family, and play the video clip, and then ask them, what did this person say? just to be able to make sure that she was sane, that she wasn't going crazy, because she would watch the video over and over again and say, like, this is what that person said, but the person kept saying, like, no, I didn't say that. That's not me. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's not being said. Those are some of the examples about gaslighting that make you feel crazy. Did you have that? Was it something that you had in your life where you're starting to doubt your reality? You're starting to doubt your perception. You're starting to doubt, wait a second, did they say that? Did they do that? And what happens is you start to doubt that to such a level that you start to doubt yourself and your intuition, like I was just saying. And what that does is it traps you a little bit longer, because as you start to lessen your thought process on your instinct, on your gut, on your intuition, and you start to lower those defenses, and it allows for that person to control you more, to manipulate you more, to be able to say, no, this is what's happening, and you believe it. Because at that point you start to doubt yourself because of what they've said, how they've devalued or degraded you, and you've said, this must be what's going on, because, you know, my judgment's impaired. They obviously know what they're talking about because they can remember. I just have bad memory. Like, are any of these things like triggering? Or any of these things like popping out, like different thoughts or different expressions? Maybe you're going through this in a relationship and you're like, wait a second, like, I feel like I can identify with that. If it is, do me a favor, like, leave a comment below, like, just like a sentence. It doesn't matter. Just leave like a comment so that other people know, because I think a lot of people watch these videos and they watch them and they take them in, and then they're like, yeah, that happens to me, but sometimes they don't identify with it. Sometimes they don't share. And as a result, you have one person that watches this video and they glance at it and they're like, yeah, but that's probably just me. Like, there's probably not a whole bunch of, there's a lot of people out there that are dealing with this kind of stuff. Let people know. Let people know. We do this every single day with producing different media to go out, whether that's on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, to try to be able to educate people about these abusive relationships. We recently developed a little while ago the NARC app, NARC, Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Community. It's meant for people to go as a safe place for people who have been abuse survivors, who can learn about narcissism, who can track their growth, who can record their truth, who can track their no contact from the narcissist, who engage in community, who can get into exclusive lives so that there's no way that other people can see them, but it's lives that are actually inside the app. Be able to meet monthly with Zoom calls so that we can set like a focus and a goal moving forward to try to help people grow, heal, and change. Because this stuff is real. And a lot of people don't realize that it's out there. A lot of people don't realize that it is happening on a day-to-day basis, that someone is gaslighting you, someone is making you feel crazy. A lot of times they'll take this and they'll change it around, saying that you're too sensitive, that you're oversensitive, that you're overreacting, that you're blowing things out of proportion, that you really don't know what you're talking about. When in reality you do. But over a period of time, your resilience to that has gotten lowered. Your ego has gotten bruised. Your self-confidence and self-worth have been devalued and a lot of times discarded. So when you think about this and when you go through it, think through what is happening in my life that I'm starting to question, is this actually true? What reality are you living in where you're living in a spot that's saying, hey, this hasn't happened. This isn't happening. But when you start investigating, when you're starting to look a little bit different, you're like, wait a second, is that what I know? Or is that just the perception that has been placed upon me by another person? Gaslighting is real. And it's very, very deadly in its abuse. Because it comes very quickly, and it makes you very confused, and it lowers your thought process and your idea of who you are, of what you're worth, and of a plethora of different things that make you question your reality. If you're questioning your reality today, I want to encourage you to start journaling, to start writing down the truth that you see every single day, to start writing down phrases or experiences or things that are happening. You might need to do a video log to remind yourself so you can watch it back and say, hey, this is me saying this on this day. You might need to do like a voice recording so that you keep your sanity, so you know this is what happened, this is what transpired. Because sometimes you have to get back to a place where you ground yourself in the truth. And that grounding in the truth can only happen when you know for sure this is what's going on. Oftentimes you're in those relationships and they just feel super crazy. You feel super lost. You feel super confused. What I try to do on a day-to-day basis through the videos, but especially working with people one-on-one, is I try to help them get unlost. Try to get them clear of the fog that's in their lives by these relationships that come in that are toxic, that gaslight, that manipulate, that future fake, that shed all this type of fog around people's lives and they can't see what's actually going on. And I try to break through that thought process and the story and underlying what's going on in the moment so they can get to the place that they can live in truth and you can live happy and healthy. If you want to talk someday or if you want to reach out, check it out. You can go to rawmotivations.com. You can click the link down below. Would love to be able to interact with you, to be able to help you understand that you're not crazy. And how you feel in this moment is actually normal compared to everything you've had to endure.
Did you deal with a Christian narcissist or a Christian abuser or someone that used religion to be able to mask the abusive natures that they did to you on a day-to-day basis? Have you ever encountered individuals who would use religion as a tool to be able to control and manipulate other people? What does it mean to be a Christian abuser, and how does their behavior differ from that of other abusers? And join me today as we delve into the complex topic of Christian abusers, exploring their tactics, the concept of sexual coercion, and debunking the notion of Christian abusers that they're somehow different than other abusers. If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness of narcissistic abuse. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations and your guide in the 7-day challenge called Escape Toxicity, the 7-day challenge to healing. It's our way to be able to help first give you the first step in moving forward in that healing process of understanding narcissistic abuse, reactive abuse, the guilt of being with a narcissist, and ultimately helping you step forward in dealing with the triggers and the story that you're telling yourself in that toxic situation. You can access that at escapetoxicity.com today, or if you want to work one-on-one with me, you can go to rawmotivations.com. So when we talk about this aspect of Christianity and religion and abuse, it oftentimes gets mixed all together and muddled together. So to give you an overview of like where I'm coming from, I'm a Christian. Okay, so understanding like, hey, he has a perspective that is coming from inside where a lot of people view this aspect of like Christian abuse. And you might be surprised when we get to the third point of what I actually think about it and where we're actually going with this. Okay, so I want to shed light on Christian abuse and the harmful tactics. Okay, defining it, looking at like what it actually is and how a lot of times people use religion to try to control, to manipulate, to be able to force people to do things that don't even match up, even in like religion. Okay, by helping you just understand like awareness of this, like this is a piece that a lot of people do not realize is even a thing, and a lot of people that are inside Christianity don't even realize that it's happening inside as well. Okay, so the first aspect that I want you to understand is misusing religion for control. Now, I'm not just talking about like a pastor or a priest like misusing that for control, but I'm also talking about your partner. I'm talking about how he actually shows up in the relationship telling you like you need to do X, Y, and Z because of this. Christian abusers oftentimes employ religious teachings and beliefs as a means of exerting power and control over you. So like, you don't like this? Well, you're supposed to submit because it says you're supposed to submit over here. You're supposed to respect me because it says respect me over here. Leaving a lot of other pieces out of context where they're actually supposed to love you, but they're not actually showing love. Oftentimes they're going to exploit authority as far as like within the religious realm of like, I have authority over you. I'm more important than you. I'm better than you. This is not just a man versus woman thing, but a lot of times you will see that, you know, where it says like, oh, see, it says here, like I'm the stronger version. You're supposed to submit to me. You're supposed to bow down versus like this mutual respect of both people working together. Oftentimes you don't see that in religious organizations. You don't see that in Christianity. Instead, you only see one person that's like lording it over. Like, you're my servant, you're my slave, you're just the housewife. And it's not really an effective way of working together to be able to move forward in a healthy environment. So a lot of times you'll see narcissists that will exploit their authority. Like, let me do what I want to do, but put it in a religious context to manipulate you in accepting it and to giving into it. Now, you'll see this a lot of times going back and forth, but then you also see it in a very hypocritical way, where you'll see the narcissist that does one thing, but then holds you accountable for that same thing that you do, but uses it in a religious context of like, I can't believe you sinned in that way. I can't believe you did that. Well, you're like, you just cheated. Yeah, but I can't believe you sinned by disrespecting me. Like sometimes like a crazy like parallel, but like you'll see this happen where narcissists will accuse you of something or try to hold you accountable for something, but they're not holding themselves accountable. So exploiting this authority by using the religious context to manipulate you, to shame you, to put you down, to make you feel bad about yourself. So ultimately they feel better about themselves. And the last aspect is just to enforce obedience, to get compliance out of you by saying, look, this is what you're supposed to do. It says right here in the good book, you got to follow this rule, which means you need to follow me, which means you need to serve me. Okay. This does not apply to people that are in toxic relationships. Like you do not have to conform to someone else's beliefs or someone else's viewpoint just because they slap a Bible verse on it. Abuse is abuse no matter what. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we move forward. Like you'll get to the place where the person will distort what they're actually doing, what they're actually reading. They'll distort the scripture. They'll distort like the Bible, like other sacred texts. They'll distort those and use it to enforce gender roles and use it to enforce religious rituals to justify abusive behaviors. It's important if you understand they're going to use different things to try to twist and manipulate to justify. Okay, so think of it this way: you might have a Christian abuser who's using selective interpretations of biblical passages to justify abusive actions. Well, it says I can do this, such as claiming that a wife should submit unquestionably to her husband's authority, even if it involves mistreatment or coercion. That's not in the Bible, but people want to be able to say it is. At the end of the day, like the Bible is talking about this mutual respect, this mutual submission one to another, not one person being like Lord over the other person submitting to them. It's not talking about that. It's talking about mutual respect. The problem is people don't want to do that, and people are unwilling to do that. And you shouldn't have mutual respect when one person is abusing you. So you need to be able to see like the context here. They use religious in teaching to enforce strict rules, regulations. You have to comply, which oftentimes will isolate you from other support networks. Those people aren't good for you. They're not Christian. They're not connected. Your family isn't supporting us the way they should. All these different pieces. Okay. Now, this steps into the sticky subject that people don't want to talk about majority of time, called understanding sexual coercion. Sexual coercion is a form of abuse characterized by manipulation and control of the person's sexuality, oftentimes involving pressure, intimidation, or deception. Oftentimes, this will look in the relationship, in the marriage, as marital rape. Like this is where the other person is pushing onto another person when they're saying no, but the other person is like, you are my wife, and it's dictated by the sacred text, it's dictated by the Bible, it's dictated by whatever, taking stuff out of context, that you need to give me what I want. So therefore, I get what I want, and I'm going to take it from you no matter what, because you're supposed to submit. Okay, this is very real and very prevalent in a lot of Christianity. Okay, people that take advantage of other people under the guise of, well, we're married, so I get to do what I want with you. Wrong. Abuse is still abuse no matter what. Oftentimes, this will push you and like pressure you, intimidate you, like put you down, put you in a place where you're like, oh, I guess this is what I have to do. Christian abusers exploit religious teachings about purity, about modesty, and submission to coerce victims into unwanted sexual acts. Make it even more challenging for you to speak out due to religious guilt and religious shame. And so they put you in this cycle of you're like, well, I should talk about this. I should actually come clean about this. I should ask for help, but you can't do that because the religious structure that you're in already shames people for that, already puts people down. You see this happen so much with a religious organization that you're in, wants people to conform versus actually have a relationship. Wants people to look a certain way versus actually being honest and real. Christian abuser, he may guilt you into, engaging in sexual acts by referencing the teachings in their religion on marital duties or the consequences of denying them. Oftentimes making it your fault. Like, if you deny me, then I guess I need to get it from somewhere else. You're like, how does it even make sense? A lot of times they'll still use that. They use religious rhetoric to convince you that your resistance or your refusal to their unwanted sexual advances is sinful. exploiting their religious beliefs, and justifying their own sexual gratification without regard to you, without regard to your own consent in the process. Like, this is a big piece that people do not talk about, but needs to be brought out. This happens a lot more, I believe, in Christian circles because of the abuse of let me use this as an excuse to do what I want to another person. So, last thing that I want to bring up, I kind of mentioned this earlier, is this idea of a Christian abuser. So for me, contrary to popular belief, Christian abusers, I don't think are in their own distinct category because I also don't think that they're Christian. Abusers that identify with Christians are, as a Christian, is still an abuser. Their actions don't align with true principles of Christianity, with true principles of how they've been grown or changed or developed. And it's important to actually separate their distorted interpretation of religion and themselves from the genuine values of love, compassion, respect taught by Christianity. At the end of the day, how a lot of times I'll say it is a Christian abuser does not exist. Doesn't. Okay? Because a person cannot say to you, I am a Christian, meaning I've been impacted by the God of the universe and have a changed and a transformed life because of that. Person cannot say that and then continue to abuse. Doesn't work that way. The Bible even says, by their fruit you shall know them. So like when someone is consistently abusing, they can't be a Christian. When someone's showing up in a healthy and loving, respectful way, they're not abusing. And you see, so when we walk through this, you need to be able to understand by the fruit of another person, you can actually know if what they're saying is true or not. Like if what they're saying is real or not. He's saying he's a Christian, but he's consistently putting you in a place of coercion. And that's not a Christian. That's not Christ-like. That's not someone who is emulating what they actually believe, emulating what the religion actually teaches and preaches. See, this is the piece that I hate that gets construed by societies. People that say, like, well, my narcissist was a Christian, my abuser was a Christian. And I'm like, no, they weren't. Because if they're consistently acting that way, they were not Christ-like at all. They didn't actually have an impact with the God of the universe, but instead thought they were their own God, and as a result, they could make up their own rules, their own regulations, and do whatever they wanted. That's not a Christian abuser. That's just an abuser. That's not someone who actually cares about you. That's just someone who's very entitled about themselves. Thinks that they're the center of the universe, and that's it. If this resonated with you at all, one, share it with other people, and then two, leave a comment down below. If you're like, hey, I want to talk more about this. I want to dive into like, how do I actually navigate this? How do I navigate the abuse, the divorce, all the different pieces? Then please reach out for help. You can go to rawmotivation.com, sign up for one-on-one. We can talk about you being a good fit moving forward and working together and helping you navigate the ins and outs and the hard pieces of healing from a toxic relationship. And if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, review. Thanks so much for listening on the podcast or watching on the video today. Narcissists are very huge in the aspect of being hypocritical. He'll say one thing and he'll do another. He'll tell you you're not allowed to do this and he'll go out and do it. He'll cheat on you 20 times, but he'll break up with you as soon as you cheat. This whole piece of these polar opposites, the narcissist will say, hey, one thing and do the exact opposite. Do as I say and not as I do. How many red flags can you identify inside of your relationship today? We've done a couple different videos on red flags, and I want to show you 7 particular ones that I've identified that for me and for people that I work with oftentimes are very triggering. Triggering to the fact of once you see them and once you hear them and once you understand them, you will start to see them all the time in your relationship. But I want you to consider, have you been able to even identify red flags? The majority of times someone gets in a toxic relationship, they ignore the red flags. You did this at the beginning of your relationship. You saw different things, different issues that you're like, it doesn't really feel right. It doesn't really make sense. Why would he respond that way? Why would he act that way? But you excuse it away. You said it's not that big of a deal. You just kind of move past it, brush it under the rug, move past it. He's having a bad day. That's just not him. Maybe that's just issues with his family. Like there's multiple things and multiple excuses and stories that you told yourself just to be able to move past this. But then you got to the place where you realized that the red flags that you were seeing wasn't just 1 or 2, but it was a whole field of them. Like it was a massive area of red flags that had been calling out to and trying to make you see and understand the red flags in the relationship. Now it's hard because once you start to see them, you'll start to beat yourself up. You'll start to look at yourself and be like, now that I've taken the rose-colored glasses off and I see all the red flags around me, how could I be so stupid? And I want you to pause for a moment and give yourself grace, because you can't judge yourself in the past based on knowledge you have in the present. It just doesn't work that way. Like, you don't beat yourself up because you didn't know algebra when you were 3. Why? Because you didn't have the knowledge, the training, the learned aspect of it at that age. You don't do that, but you're going to do that inside the narcissistic relationship. You'll see a red flag years after or months after, and then be like, oh, I'm so stupid. What? You didn't know. Give yourself some grace. Take a pause and give yourself some grace inside of this. So you might identify with some of these 7 that we're going to talk through today. And when you do, and when you feel this tendency to beat yourself up, pause. Give yourself some grace and understand you didn't know what you didn't know. There was other reasons why you might have discounted it. There was different pieces of worth or value or identity or boundaries that were already broken or that were already fractured. And as a result, you let this person in. Now, let's step into 7 of them. 7 of them particularly. I'm pulling some of the information here from Psychopath Free. It's a fantastic book. If you haven't already read it, pick it up. Would love to be able to help you with this. If you haven't seen some of our books, some of the journals that we have, we've got From Fantasy to Reality, and we also have From Regret to Gratitude, trying to be able to help change your mindset from the toxic relationship. You can pick all of these up on Amazon, so feel free to be able to check those out. Let's talk about the 7 red flags of a narcissist. Number 1, and probably one of the biggest one that I hear on a day-to-day basis, is gaslighting and crazy making. Gaslighting, where the narcissist is trying to change your current reality, trying to shift what you're currently feeling, what you're currently thinking, what you're currently seeing. The whole aspect here of gaslighting is not just lying. It's not just telling you a lie, but it's taking it to a whole nother level. It's trying to make you feel crazy for what you even believe, what you even see, what you even hear. It's taking it to a whole nother level. Gaslight came from a movie back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, I don't remember. It came back, an older movie, black and white movie, and this piece of gaslight. And the idea was there was this gaslight flickering in the house, and a husband tried to make the wife feel crazy. Like, that's not true. That's not real. So this is where the term kind of originated from, this idea of gaslighting, trying to convince someone that what they were perceiving, their reality, wasn't actually real. What you're seeing today is not real. Like, this shirt is actually purple. It's not aqua, blue, whatever color you want to identify with. Okay, so I need you to understand this is the aspect where the narcissist wants to shift your perspective of reality. This is one of the biggest red flags. You see something and he says, no, that's not what happened. You see something pop up on his phone and he gaslights you into believe that you didn't see it. That it wasn't actually there. And you go to look at his phone and it's not there because he's already deleted it. This is a piece that you need to understand. Narcissists will do this oftentimes. They will gaslight and they will try to make you feel crazy on purpose. Because if he can gaslight you and make you feel crazy, you're going to spend more and more time trying to figure it out, more and more time sticking around, more and more time trying to justify what they're projecting, what they're putting onto you. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2 is the ultimate hypocrite. Narcissists are very huge in the aspect of being hypocritical. He'll say one thing and he'll do another. He'll tell you, you're not allowed to do this, and he'll go out and do it. He'll cheat on you 20 times, but he'll break up with you as soon as you cheat. This whole piece of these polar opposites, the narcissist will say, hey, one thing, and do the exact opposite. Do as I say and not as I do. The narcissist has extremely high expectations for fidelity, respect, and adoration. After the idealization phase, they will give you none of these back to you. They will cheat, lie, criticize, and manipulate, but you're expected to remain perfect. Otherwise, you will promptly be replaced and deemed unstable. This whole aspect of you have to actually match up to what I want you to do. Unrealized expectations. The whole piece of do as I say, not as I do. This is where a lot of times narcissists will continue to move the bar. Like raise up and say, hey, this is where I want you to be. And you're like, okay. And then you get to that. And he's like, oh, no, just kidding. That's not where you actually need to be. I was just saying that was the first step to here. Oh, okay, let me work harder. Oh, yeah, and it always keeps moving. Because he's always going to be hypocritical about what he's saying, what he's doing, how he's coming across. So when you see a guy that's being hypocritical, his words don't match up his actions, giant red flag here. So just acknowledge this. Whatever he says and whatever he does, if it doesn't match up, if what he says to you of this is how you're supposed to live and he does the exact opposite, doesn't match up, giant red flag. Because there's bigger things going on there than just the surface of, oh, I forgot, and oh, there's a whole lot of different pieces there. Giant red flag. Okay, so please hear that. All right, the third one that we're going to bring up. You find yourself explaining the basic elements of human respect to a full-grown man. This is interesting because you wouldn't think of this as a narcissistic trait, and I'm not saying it is, I'm saying it's a red flag, right? So inside this piece is I need you to understand there's this red flag here of having to explain something. Not just anything, but basic feelings, basic emotions. Normal people understand fundamentally concepts like honesty and kindness. Narcissists often appear to be childlike and innocent. Don't let the mask fool you, okay? No adult should need to be told how he or she is making other people feel. Now, this is the part where people are like, but he's just emotionally immature. He had this abuse growing up. He had all these things. And you start projecting and making your own stories that the narcissist is like, sweet, keep those stories coming because I'll keep milking them and using them to keep abusing you. When you have to explain something to a narcissist, you're explaining common decency. You're telling him, hey, that is unkind. You're treating me like an inconvenience. You're hurting me with the words that you're saying. Some of these phrases are what I'd say to my 4-year-old, trying to help her understand what is actually going on. I have to explain certain things because I'm learning how to train and teach her up in the way of honesty, of morals, of integrity, all these different pieces. But you're going to find yourself doing this to a grown adult, to someone that you realize I'm trying to train him on his feelings, on his emotions. The problem is you're not the first one. It's not like, oh, you were the first person and you are the one that's going to save him. Stop believing that lie. It is a lie. And you're going to continue to stay longer and longer because you feel like you're the one that's going to magically fix him when he's had his entire life and no one's been able to fix him because guess what? No one can. He's the only one that can change his fate. He's the only one that can change the direction he's actually going to go if he's willing to be honest. All right, let's move on to the next one. We're going to run out of time really fast here. All right, so number 5, I think. 5? Yep. Nope. 4. Yep, we're going to move on. Okay. You find yourself playing detective. It's never happened in any other relationship, but suddenly you're investigating the person you once trusted unconditionally. If they're active on Facebook, you start scrolling back years on their posts, on their albums. Same with their ex. You're seeking answers to a feeling you can't quite explain. There will be this gut, this piece inside of you that's like, I have to research something. Do you know how many people I talk to that they're like, I have never looked at a guy's phone before, but I just felt like I had to. I feel awful. But when I did, I found out all these women that he's texting to. Yeah, because you had to play detective because you knew something was wrong. Your gut knew something was wrong, and then you found the proof. This is just what it is. You'll see this. So this is a giant red flag. If you're playing detective in your relationship, you have no trust in your relationship. If you have no trust in your relationship, I hate to break it to you, but you have no relationship. You can't have a relationship without trust. At that point, you're just two people passing in the night. Like there's actually no relationship, no foundation there. All right, next one. You feel on edge around this person, but you still want them to like you. You find yourself writing off most of their questionable behavior as accident or insensitive because you're in constant competition with others for their attention and praise. They don't seem to care when you leave their side. They just easily move on to the next source of energy. How many of you have been in this spot where I know this person is not good for me, but you still want them? I know that I shouldn't be with them, but the phone rings and you're like, oh, yes, he's ringing. So you get off the phone and you're like, I can't believe I talked to him. I shouldn't have done this. Like this is the worst thing ever. This is the piece of a trauma bond. This is the piece of being addicted to a toxic person. And until we change the thought process, you'll always have it. You will develop this addiction and it will go so deep that you will be stuck forever. Next one, compares you to everyone else in his life. He compares you to ex-lovers, friends, family members, and your eventual replacement. When idealizing, he's going to make you feel special by telling you how much better you are than those people. When devaluing, he's going to use those comparisons to make you feel jealous and inferior. It always just switches and flip-flops. He uses the things that he likes about you, and he's like, oh, I like this about you. Good attribute, good attribute, good attribute. Oh, yep, now I found someone else. Hey, all those things I liked about you, yeah, no, that's actually a detriment, detriment, detriment. It's just an easy way to do it. It's not because he did like or he didn't like. It's actually just an easy thing to do. Like you're really kind and affectionate, and then as a result, he calls you clingy. And so it's just an easy thing to do. It's not because he cared about you or he didn't care about you. Not because he liked that or he didn't like that. He just used something. He used X, Y, and Z. You like the color blue, and he's like, that's amazing. I love the color blue. And then he finds a new supply that likes green. He's like, yeah, I hate blue. I can't believe you ever talked to. Silly example, but this is what the narcissist uses. He just uses data, just information to be able to control and manipulate you. Last one.
Okay? Pity parties and sympathy stories. His bad behavior always has sob story roots. He claims to behave this way because of an abusive ex, an abusive parent, or an abusive cat. They say that all they ever wanted is some peace and quiet, that they hate the drama, and yet there's more drama surrounding them than anyone else they've ever known. Sounds like a covert narcissist, just a little bit more detail there. But inside of this, there's always a piece of the reason why I respond this way. I hit you because this is how I grew up. This is how I knew discipline. This is how my parents raised me. I lie because I have to protect myself, because I'm afraid, because I'm scared. And all those things might have some roots. But at the same time, they don't justify him doing it. That's the piece that you need to understand, and that you need to probably wake up and realize there's no justification for abuse. There might be reasons of why it stems or where it stems from, but that doesn't justify it happening. I can give you countless stories of people that were abused in childhood, but they're not abusive now because they've worked on their own healing. He hasn't worked on his own healing, and he's not willing to work on his own healing. It's part of the reason why you're still watching. Because of the simple fact that he keeps claiming that he's going to change, or he doesn't care about change, or he's not even going to therapy. So as a result, you're clinging on to this piece of hope. There is none. Because as a result, he doesn't care about himself, and he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about the relationship, and you're holding on for a long period of time. So where are you at inside of this conversation? Like inside of us looking at this place of red flags with a narcissist, how many are you identifying? How many are you seeing for you? If you're seeing some, you might want to start checking this out. If you're a woman that's trapped in a toxic relationship looking for freedom, then go to rawmotivationscoaching.com today to be able to hear from other women who have been liberated, who've gone through the process to be freed, mentally and emotionally, and are moving from survivors to thrivers in their lives today.